Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to Get Hit with the Truth. So today we are doing the rankings for the fantasy boxing or fantasy heavyweight tournament that I'm doing, interactive tournament. And this video is going to be on my number 3 seed going into the tournament, the former 2-time heavyweight champion of the world, Vitali Klitschko. Actually, former 3-time heavyweight champion of the world, Vitali Klitschko. Dr. Iron Fist. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So, again, guys, this tournament, you know, it was done on a point system. The rankings were. And, you know, so if you're wondering how the rankings were settled and all that and decided, it's based on who you beat, title fights, how many titles, you know, all that kind of stuff goes a long way. Vitali Klitschko finishes as the 3 seed. He went 12-2 in 14 title fights from 2000 to now, or you know, from 2000 through when he gave up the title in his last reign as champion. And that's it. It was over 3 title reigns. And we're going to go into his career from the year 2000, because he was already entering the year 2000. He was already the reigning WBO champion, but the WBO title at the time was not considered to be part of the undisputed crown. He was an undefeated fighter on the rise. Big guy, 6'7", but again, it was more, the WBO title at the time was considered to be more of a European type title, so it wasn't taken hugely serious. He had captured the title in I believe it was 1999 when he defeated Herbie Hyde, stopping him in only 2 rounds. So he really had become little known. He had moved somewhat ahead of his brother, who was considered to be the more talented fighter, but his brother had lost to a guy named Ross Purity, and in the late 90s right there, when he ran out of gas. And Klitschko, Vitali being the WBO champion, was starting to get a little bit more look and started to be taken a little bit more serious, you know, as he successfully defended the title twice in 1999. But in his first title defense in 2000, he would defend his belt against Chris Bird, an American southpaw heavyweight, and was winning the fight throughout. He was in control of the action. He was doing more damage. He was winning the fight. It was kind of a one-sided fight. Then in the 10th round, he had to before the 10th round, he had to retire in his corner because he had torn his I think his rotator cuff, and couldn't continue. So the fight was ruled a TKO victory for Chris Bird. And Vitali Klitschko, once that happened, people right away started questioning his heart. You know, started questioning his toughness right there, because you know, he was winning the fight so one-sidedly. A lot of people think he should have kept going in order to hold on to his title, because he would have won outright. So after that, you know, the Klitschkos again took one on the chin right there, the Klitschko brothers, and people weren't too sure how you know, how he was going to be seen. He returned against an undefeated fighter named Timo Hoffman, and got a got a clean decision win over him, and pushed forward. Then he had wins over Orlin Norris, who was a former world title challenger. He knocked him out in 1 round. And then he took on the guy that defeated his brother a couple years earlier, Ross Purity, and he stopped him in 11 rounds to gain some revenge for the family. Then he took on a couple veterans that had fought for world titles, and Von Bean, who had been in the ring with Evander Holyfield and Larry Donald, and he got in 2002 he got knockout victories over both of them. And then an opportunity came in June of 2003. He was the WBC's #1 ranked contender, but had not been granted the mandatory shot yet. And Kirk Johnson was supposed to challenge Lennox Lewis for the WBC title and had to pull out 2 weeks prior to the fight due to an injury. So the WBC and Lennox Lewis offered the fight to Vitali Klitschko on short notice. And what a great decision it was for Vitali to agree to step in the ring with the great Lennox Lewis in this fight, because it changed his career forever. Vitali went in there and went to war with Lennox Lewis. He was winning the fight for the first, for the first 3-4 rounds. He was in control, landing big shots on Lennox. Lennox really looked like the first couple rounds like he didn't know what he had gotten into. Then Lennox started to weather the storm. In the end of the third, heading into the fourth, he started to get back into the fight, started landing big, hard shots on Vitali in return, and seemed like he had, in the fifth and the sixth round, seemed like he had swung the tide. But it was still a great action fight at that point where these two big guys are landing big shots. Then after the sixth, Vitali had a very bad cut over his eye. The referee went and ordered the doctor to look at his eye, and when they lifted up, you lifted up the cut, you could almost see his bone of his eye. It was a very deep cut that was caused by a punch, so the referee stopped the fight on the doctor's orders, and Lennox Lewis would retain the title by sixth round TKO. But Vitali was yelling no. He was very, very upset that the fight was not continuing. And he wanted to rematch with Lennox Lewis. Lennox wanted to wait a little bit. After agreeing originally, he wanted to wait a little bit longer so Vitali would return 6 months after the fight and take on the guy that Lennox was originally supposed to fight in Kirk Johnson, and he would destroy Kirk Johnson in just 2 rounds. Then Lennox looked like he had a date with Vitali for April of 2004 to defend his title. But before the fight would be finalized, Lennox Lewis decided to retire from the sport of boxing, retired as the heavyweight champion, and the dream rematch was gone for Vitali Klitschko, sadly. But Vitali stormed forward. The vacant title would go on the line in April as planned for Vitali, as he would battle his brother, another one of his brother's conquerors, in Corey Sanders, the hard-hitting southpaw from South Africa. And Vitali took all his anger out on Corey Sanders, dominating Corey Sanders, beating him up, bloodying Corey Sanders, and the fight was stopped after in the eighth round, and Vitali Klitschko would claim the WBC heavyweight championship of the world and the legitimacy as the #1 heavyweight in the world at that time. Then there was a proposed plan for Vitali to fight Mike Tyson. And then Mike Tyson got upset against Danny Williams from England and stopped. So Vitali instead would make the first defense of his title against the Englishman Danny Williams. He would absolutely punish Danny Williams, putting him down, I think, 4 times, en route to an 8th round TKO victory, as he would retain his belt. After that, there was talks of him to fight Hasim Rahman, who was the mandatory #1 challenger. So heading into 2005, that was the proposed plan. But Vitali suffered an injury in training, so Rahman went forward and became the interim champion. But then Vitali, in the second half of the year, with the proposed mandatory fight against Rahman on the line, Vitali decided to retire from the sport of boxing, surprisingly, due to injuries. But the WBC named him the champion emeritus, which means you can come back and fight for the title at any time. Doesn't matter when, and you move ahead of the mandatory challenger as well. So, in between fights was almost 4 years, but Vitali towards the end of 2007, made the decision that he wanted to come back. And after injuries and stuff suffered in training, finally in October of 2008, Vitali Klitschko would challenge Samuel Peter for the WBC heavyweight title. A lot of people weren't sure what they were going to see in this fight, and if Vitali would be the same. And Vitali put everybody's opinions to rest as he went out and absolutely dominated Samuel Peter over 8 rounds to capture the WBC title for his second time, and start another reign as champion. He would go on a very good reign as champion, this one lasting from 2008 all the way through 2012 actually. So a good 4-year run as champion. In his first defense, he would fight former cruiserweight champion Juan Carlos Gomez, would dominate him, stopping him in 9 rounds. Then in September of 2009, he would face off against undefeated Chris Arreola. And a very good action-packed fight. He would break down Arreola and stop him in 10 rounds to retain his belt. Then he would take on undefeated Kevin Johnson and score a one-sided unanimous decision. Then in May of 2010, he would defend his title against Albert Sosnowski and dominate him, stopping him in 10 rounds. Then in October of 2010, he would battle Shannon Briggs, the former world champion, would dominate him over 12 rounds and retain his belt. Then he would return in March of 2011 and take on undefeated Adelanier Solis in a fight that a lot of people are looking forward to. Solis got injured in the first round, and Vitali would score a first-round knockout victory as Solis would not get up, injuring his knee. Then he would return 6 months later in September of 2011 and take on former cruiserweight champion Tomas Adamek, and would stop him in 10 rounds. Then he would face off against Derek Chisora from England in February of 2012. He would dominate Chisora over 12 one-sided rounds and retain his title. And then finally in September of 2012, he would make the final defense of his title against undefeated Manuel Char, and he would hit Char, be winning the fight, and in the 4th round it seemed like Char suffered an injury and couldn't continue, and it was rolled a TKO victory for Vitali as he retained his title again. And after that, Vitali decided to retire from the sport of boxing. It was unexpected, but then again it wasn't, because Vitali had made it clear that he wanted to get into politics in the Ukraine, run for president, all that stuff, and I think injuries really just kind of wore him down, because that's why he retired the first time. But Vitali, I mean, just such a systematic fighter, respectfully retired out of the sport. The knocks on Vitali were that he was just too robotic, right? He wasn't as talented as his brother, too robotic, excuse me. But he was also had the better chin and was more aggressive. And I think Vitali was just a beast, The thing that he lacked, as opposed to his brother or even a Lennox Lewis, is the perfectly timed shots. He would just overwhelm you with his work rate, and just overall punches. But he didn't possess that perfectly timed shot that could lay you out with one punch. So you didn't see a lot of those highlights right there. But Vitali was just so good. He could take a punch, and I'm not saying it sucked, but it kind of did suck that because they're brothers, they couldn't fight each other, which I totally respect and understand. But Vitali didn't really have much of an opportunity to unify belts and add to his legacy. His biggest win, if you want to call like a single victory, you can argue. You could say it was Corey Sanders, it was the Danny Williams fight, the Sam Peter fight. I personally like the Sam Peter fight because he came back after 4 years and absolutely dominated Samuel Peter. And to that point, Samuel Peter had only lost to his brother Vladimir, in which Peter had knocked Vladimir down 3 times and lost a decision. And he absolutely picked apart Sam Peter and decimated him. So after a 4-year layoff. So I personally picked that one, but that kind of sucks that Sam Peter's the biggest win. Of course, we all know him for the showdown with Lennox, though, which was great. And from 1999 through 2012, and there's a 4-year gap in which he was off, Vitali Klitschko for 13 years was not 1 or 2, you know, or 3 when Lennox Lewis was during his reign. Well, once Lennox was done, so you're talking, you know, the better part of a decade, Vitali was number 1 or 2 every year outside of the years that he was retired. You know, him and his brother shut down the division, and he was a damn good heavyweight. So respect needs to be put on both Klitschko brothers. Absolutely. But Vitali had a huge heart. He proved that. His 2 losses were by injury to Chris Bird and the injury against Lennox Lewis. You know, so he never really was decisively defeated. And we were definitely robbed of the rematch with Lennox, which I think, win or lose, would have added to Vitali's legacy right there. But as great as Lennox was, he didn't want that rematch with Vitali, and that's a fact. So, I love Lennox Lewis. He's one of my favorite fighters ever. But he did not want Vitali again. I mean, he didn't want Dr. Iron Fist again. So respect needs to be put on his name. So that's it. That's what I got. That is my number 3 seed heading into this fantasy heavyweight tournament to determine the best heavyweight champion and heavyweight of this millennium so far, the first 25 years. It's an interactive tournament. Be prepared for whoever Vitali is going to fight in the first round. And we will get to that next week. I hope you enjoyed this video on the former 3-time heavyweight champion of the world, Vitali Klitschko. If you enjoyed it, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.